How did the first half of the Lakers season go? How are they going to do in this second half? How about the trade deadline action? Can we expect them to get anybody? Find out in this next edition of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. And we're done with all of the NBA festivities, and it's time to come back to action for second half of NBA action. I'm the host of Sideline Sports Podcast, Alex Naveja, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all of your SoCal sports news. And with me today is a very familiar face on Sideline Sports Podcast. He goes by the name of J.C. De Leon, the co-host of HoopBall Lakers Podcast. J.C., always a pleasure to have you on the podcast, man. It's been quite some time. How you been?
Been good, yeah. I always enjoy coming onto this show, so thanks for having me.
Always, man. Always a pleasure to have you on. You know where your spot is, everything Lakers basketball, so you always have your home here. But before we get into this action, this episode of Sideline Sports Podcast was brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by 2 million men worldwide. We have an exclusive offer for all of my listeners and my viewers, supporters, subscribers, 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code SIDELINE20. That's right, 20% off and free shipping. You can't beat that deal anywhere else. And with that, you can also get yourself the Perfect Package 3.0. Comes with the travel bag, comes with the 2 sprays right here, the deodorants to come along with it. And of course, you can't forget the Lawnmower 3.0 right here that gets the job done. I've already used it once, and man, this thing works. It's elite. You get what you pay for. So make sure, use the promo code SIDELINE20 to get yourself 20% off plus free shipping. Go on manscaped.com to go ahead and get your products today. So let's get started, JC. How about that first half of the Lakers? I know the very beginning of that first half was definitely looking very promising, but I think you and I could both agree as soon as AD had to be put on the shelf due to the injury that he's been sustaining, the Lakers have not been exactly it in this second half. So, JC, what have been your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. Like, Anthony Davis is obviously an important piece to this Lakers team, and it's been disappointing to see how much they've regressed with him on the sideline. But it could also be a combination of things. They might have been waiting for the All-Star break. LeBron's playing a lot of minutes while AD is out. There was that shortened off season that I know a lot of teams are dealing with, but the Lakers had the shortest off season of them all. Them and the Miami Heat, and Miami Heat had a really bad first half too. So I think it's a combination of all of that. I think they'll be okay once the playoffs come around, but seeding is important. And right now they're currently the 3 seed, I believe. And yeah, if they ended the season in like the 4 seed or God forbid a 5 seed, it's going to be really bad news for the Lakers team.
So the Lakers, they are in that 3rd seed right behind Utah, who is 1st seed. Then it's Phoenix that has that 2nd seed. Lakers 24 and 13 is their record. And right behind them, and I'm talking about breathing down their necks, are the LA Clippers. They are just half a game behind the Lakers, 24 and 14. And to close out this first half, it has been not easy to watch for the Lakers because just the stretches that they've been going on against. And it just really looks like that this team really does need AD and that rim protection that he provides, the points that he provides, and the rebounds, because Lakers are really losing that rebound battle. Too many easy baskets here in this first half, and there is no real rim protection. And I feel like Marc Gasol has been short from the expectations that the Lakers had when they signed him.
Yeah, he's had his moments where I think his defensive IQ is there, and he's a good anchor to the team defensively. But I would have preferred a younger, more nimble center. Like I don't think the Lakers should have gotten rid of JaVale or Dwight, and here they are in a position now to where one of the big men on their list is JaVale, and so yeah, it remains to be seen what kind of moves they're going to make. But I'm sure we'll talk about the trade deadline here in a little bit. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is they need to find a younger athletic big man.
That's the good thing about you and me, J.C. Seeing eye to eye on that opinions right there. I think they do need those two big men in JaVale and in Dwight Howard. And I think letting them go was a very big mistake by the Lakers. And not to say anything against Montrezl Harrell. I think Montrezl Harrell has been exactly what the Lakers have needed, exactly what they wanted in Montrez, but it's not enough. Even before we started recording this episode, you were talking about the depth. The Lakers don't really have much depth once you get into Trez, once you get into Kuzma, who signed that pretty big deal with the Lakers and such. And then after that, you don't really have much after. So the Lakers really do find themselves in trouble as far as the depth in the team is concerned.
Yeah, I agree. Wesley Matthews has been a little bit of a disappointment. Markieff has had a couple of good games, but for the most part, hasn't had the impact he had in the bubble. THT, Taylor Horton-Tucker, he's been playing really well, and I think in order for him to play well, he needs minutes. I don't think he's somebody that responds well to 7 or 8 minutes of play. I think he needs a lot of run to get him going in a specific game. So yeah, I mean, once you get past that initial 4 of Trez, THT, Kuzma, Caruso, it's not as deep as previously thought.
Right. Last year definitely had a little bit more depth. You had Rondo also. You had, like we talked about, Dwight Howard, and they definitely had a very deep team last year with experience with Rondo, with what he was able to do, and with Howard, with the amount of years that he's been in the league. Now, closing that first half of the season, if you ask me, I think the Lakers gave up too many wins in these last couple of games. We look at it, for instance, if you ask me those last 2 games, Lakers should have beat Phoenix. Don't at me. I will say it right now. Lakers should have won that one even without AD, because that first half, Lakers played very well. That first quarter, they gave the Phoenix Suns their money's worth, and Phoenix struggled that first quarter. But then, it's a 4-quarter game. Phoenix was in control throughout the whole entire game, and that's the problem with the Lakers. They either don't play well in that first and then just absolutely dominate in the fourth, or vice versa. And they didn't. They needed to dominate, if you ask me, all 4 quarters when it comes to a team like Phoenix. Sacramento Kings should have beat them right there. Utah, that's all Jazz. They were in absolute control of that game. Washington should have won, and they were at home. And plus, they should have beat Miami as well. So those are easily 3 games that they should have won without Anthony Davis, and they just couldn't seal the deal. I still think that the Lakers should be in a higher seed. I think they should still be in that 2nd seed.
Yeah, Phoenix is definitely a lot better than people thought. I didn't imagine them being in the 2 seed at this point in the season. And yeah, the Lakers are exhibiting all the signs of a team that's just kind of waiting for the playoffs. You mentioned all those games that they should have won. They also should have beat Detroit, and they lost to Detroit. Detroit's probably the worst team in the league, and yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's all the same signs. They play down to the level of competition. They play up for the games that are more important, and it probably shouldn't be that way.
You have to treat every opponent with respect and have to be able to play them. Now, even before we started recording, we were talking about how, in my opinion, the team last year for the Lakers was much better than this year's Lakers. Do you agree or do you disagree with that statement?
It's more consistent depth. If you could be, if the only addition the Lakers would have made this year was basically trading Danny Green for Dennis Schroeder and keeping everything else the same, yeah, this would be truly fantastic team because Dennis Schroeder has been really great, and so has Trez. I think if you'd have kept the same team, you wouldn't have been able to sign Montrez. I like the energy he brings. I like the fact that they took him away from the Clippers. But overall, I do think last year's team is a little bit more effective.
Absolutely. Championship team. They had a lot more depth, a lot more rim protection like we were talking about. Now, I noticed in plenty of games, the Lakers really were trying to up their shooting behind the arc. And I feel like the Lakers have really died because of those shots, trying to settle for the long ball instead of trying to go for an easy basket inside of the paint. And I feel like that's really been affecting them this first half as well. Instead of trying to work the shot clock, try to push inside of the paint and try to work in there, they haven't really come up lucky.
Yeah, it's inside press. There've been a lot of games where they've given up a lot of rebounds. They did that to Oklahoma City. So yeah, I think that's another area that needs to be addressed.
So first half, Lakers sitting in that 3 seed after this All-Star game, and we have to say a much needed All-Star break that the Lakers really needed after not playing a very good stretch in the last 10 games. They're 3-7. Not a very good stretch to be in if you're trying to be a contending team right then and there. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the second half of the season along with some trade deadlines. What do the Lakers need? And moving forward, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all of your SoCal sports news. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Andrew Garcia, the catcher for the Cal State San Marcos Cougars, and you're watching Sideline Sports Podcast. Enjoy.
And we bring you second half action of Sideline Sports Podcast. Again, I'm the host, Alex Naveca, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of your SoCal sports news. This episode, again, brought to you by Manscaped. Make sure to use my promo code Sideline20 to save yourself 20% off plus free shipping and any products on the website. Get yourself the perfect package, Lawnmower 3.0, whatever you guys need as far as your grooming needs are concerned. First half of the podcast, we were talking about Lakers, the performance that they had, the lack of the rim protection, living and dying by the 3, missing JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Now let's talk about this second half. Now, the Lakers, they've got somewhat of a pretty tough stretch. If you look at these first 5 games, they got to play against Indiana. Indiana, always a tough team, if you ask me. Golden State. The Lakers have definitely had their way against the Warriors. Minnesota is definitely a game that could go the Lakers' way. And then the first time, they're going to face off against Charlotte Hornets, and they're going to get a piece of LaMelo Ball the first time. Lakers going to face against the youngster there. Now, moving into this second half, what are a couple of things that you think the Lakers really need to improve on moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is this is the time of year for either the buyout market or the trading deadline, which is this year is on the 25th, is pushed back a little bit due to COVID. And so, yeah, I think any LeBron James-led team is going to be really involved in trade rumors, throughout the season. But it seems like even more so this year, especially with basically the Lakers and Brooklyn Nets sort of being in on every big piece. And so, yeah, I think, that's what the Lakers have to address is how they want to go about the trading deadline or the buyout market. I think the tricky thing with the trading deadline is any trade the Lakers might make is going to cost some combination of either Kyle Kuzma and or Taylor Horton-Tucker. And I think those are 2 pieces that I'd really like to hold on to for the future. It definitely might hurt the Lakers this year to hold on to those 2 pieces, but yeah, I mean, I'd really like to hold on to those 2. What do you think?
I think THT is going to be a very good future piece for the Lakers. He's definitely showed that. He is not afraid to be aggressive and go into the paint and try to drive it in. And of course, he's a youngster. He's a young guy. He's trying to make a name for himself, and the league is very familiar with who he is. And just give him the minutes, let him play, let him be that second string player, and let him ease his way into the NBA. As far as for Kuzma, I think that's another piece that I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, trade him away, like use him for a good trade piece. But to me, I think Kuzma is a great piece for the Lakers. I think this is a guy that does the little things right. He still battles for the boards. He still comes up defensively very good. He's very good defensively. They always put him against big name guys when it comes down to matchups. And Kyle Kuzma, if you ask me, he has to stay. If the Lakers need to address anything, it's definitely some rim protection like we talked about before. They need help, especially right now with AD being out. They need another guy that's going to be able to help out Gasol and help out Montrez. Montrez he's getting it done offensively, also defensively, but they need another guy that's somewhat like Montrez. I mean, there's a lot of names. I heard a big one going on right now, Andre Drummond being a big name. And I think that would be a great piece for the Lakers.
Yeah, he's someone who, if he gets bought out, I mean, Brooklyn is another team that might be able to get him if Andre Drummond is bought out. And if, they've already got Blake Griffin in the buyout market. If Brooklyn also gets Andre Drummond, it could be over for the season. They might just walk away with the championship. But the Lakers do seem to be in on that possibility if Andre Drummond is bought out. There's also other names that have been kind of bandied about. Houston is expected to kind of have a fire sale of all of their assets, and a lot of Lakers fans really like PJ Tucker, which I do too. On the baseline, he's one of the most accurate baseline three-point shooters in the league, and so he would be really valuable that way. Houston, I think, would be constant. Houston is going to be one of those teams that's definitely going to want both the Kyle Kuzma and the THT in return for Tucker because they want to go younger and they're tanking. But as far as that combination of players, I definitely wouldn't trade that for anything other than if for whatever reason Washington would make Bradley Beal available, and Bradley Beal, and Washington wanted Kuzma and THC. That's the only kind of deal I would trade both of those guys for a Bradley Beal type player.
Hands down, Bradley Beal is the real deal. That guy, he's averaging over 30 points a game, and why not? That's another superstar that you can add to that lineup. Now, you talked about Tucker, and then you also talked about Drummond. What do you feel like the Lakers need to address more? Do you think they need to address the front court more, or do they need more of the back court?
They do need to address the front court more. I think there'll be a 3-and-D wing available in the buyout market somewhere. If the Lakers do make some kind of a trade, they'll probably be on the, I want to say lesser end, but only because I don't know a better way to say it. They'll give up more players than they'll get back, and that I think would open up a roster spot. And so, if they were to find a trade that would be 2 or 3 players and they only got back one, then there'd be 2 open roster spots. And in the buyout market there, I think there would be like a Trevor Ariza would be available. Players like that. George Hill, Oklahoma City's probably going to buy out a lot of their contracts. So yeah, a player like that I think would be available in the buyout market later. The most pressing need, whether it be trade or buyout, is their priority needs to be addressing the big man situation.
How about DeMarcus Cousins? Do you see a reunion possibly at all?
I do, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest from other teams. DeMarcus, he played well in Houston when the limited time that he did play. And a lot of people are kind of hung up on he's not what he used to be, or he's not going to. And they say that same about Andre Drummond. But I don't think they're looking at the big picture here. Is any of those pieces on this team are not going to be a primary piece. They're going to be, a piece that fits in the whole puzzle. And so that, I think, is where they're going to be more valuable.
Another name that seems to be floating around for the Lakers too, and they would have to give up a big chunk of that roster is Victor Oladipo. How likely do you see that even going on to help out on the backcourt?
Victor Oladipo is another player that I think is available league wide. He's someone. The Rockets don't have as much leverage with him as they think, in my opinion, because he's on the last year of his contract. He can leave them with nothing in the offseason, or they can just get something. And so I think I've seen one proposed trade online where the Lakers would give up like KCP, Wesley Matthews, and a couple of draft picks for Oladipo, and that I think would be a good move because you hold on to your young assets, and yeah, Victor Oladipo is a really great defensive wing.
I read up on a trade is somewhat identical to it, but it was actually more to the trade. So Lakers would get Oladipo, and they would have to give up already THT, KCP, I believe McKinney, and also a first-round draft pick. So a much bigger package there for Oladipo.
And that, as much as I would like to hold on to THT, I'd probably make that deal too.
I forgot. They also added Morris on that trade just as like a filler piece as well. So I wouldn't know how I felt about that trade, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it'd be a lot, but at the same time, a trade like that it would open up roster spots, and so that's where I think you could go after a George Hill or a Trevor Ariza, like I said. Trevor Ariza is someone who I thought would get bought out from the beginning of the season. So I've just kind of been waiting for that to happen.
And a Trevor Ariza reunion would be very nice for the Lakers. The three-point shooting that he possesses, he still got some nice hands to be able to swipe the ball and just to have that presence, that veteran presence on that court. So now my final question to you, JC, is what are your predictions going into the second half? Do you see the Lakers finishing off stronger than they did the first half? Do you think it's going to be a struggle? What are your thoughts?
I think they'll end up finishing with the 2 or the 3 seed. I don't think Phoenix will probably come down a little bit, and so will Utah probably. And so I think Utah might hold on to that number 1 seed, but then I think you'll see the Lakers and the Clippers kind of rise, and Phoenix will be about the 4 seed, which is kind of where people thought they'd be all along.
Well, the Lakers do play Jazz another 2 times. That's going to be in April 17th and April 19th. They will face off against Phoenix on May 9th. And also a little sooner, the 21st of this month as well. So this second half of the season, it's going to be very interesting. They've got some pretty tough opponents. Of course, the Clippers, one team, they play Brooklyn and they play Boston, even though Boston hasn't had the team that a lot of people thought that they would. But I would say the second half, it's going to be challenging, but I see the Lakers pushing through. I think they'll finish the 2nd seed because Jazz, they're on a whole nother level. And Lakers, it's not going to be them winning that 1st seed. They're going to finish at 2nd. And most likely Clippers finishing that 3rd. And then the Suns dropping down to that 4th seed. So that's all the time we have left here on Sideline Sports Podcast. We thank you all so much for joining us in this one. If you guys like this episode, please give this episode a thumbs up. Comment down below what you guys think this second half is going to be like for the Lakers. Who do you guys want to see the Lakers trade for? What kind of trade predictions do you guys have? Second half predictions. I want to hear all about it. And also hit the subscribe button down below. We're trying to get this channel to grow as much as possible. We're trying to get to 300 subscribers by the end of this year. So we've got a long ways to go. And without further ado, J.C. De Leon, the co-host of HoopBall Lakers Podcast. As always, it's a pleasure to have you, man.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
We'll be seeing you real soon as the season goes on, when playoffs roll around. We'll definitely be in touch. But this episode of Sideline Sports Podcast was brought to you by Manscaped. who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. We have an exclusive offer for all of my supporters, viewers, 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code Sideline20 at manscaped.com. Get yourself the perfect package. Get yourself the travel bag, the deodorants, and also the Lawn Mower 3.0 right here. This thing works wonders. I'm telling you guys, if you guys are looking for something more precise, that's it. Or if you guys are looking for all of your grooming needs, just go to manscaped.com, use the promo code Sideline20, and save yourself some money, folks. There are plenty of things that they offer for all of your grooming needs. But I'm Alex Naveja from Sideline Sports Podcast, signing off. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, a source of your SoCal sports news. Signing off. Enjoy second half of the Lakers season.